Good day, G9. We are back with another video for lesson 9, which is the graphing of the quadratic function or the so-called parabola. So before I start, I hope that you'll get the copy of your module, a pen, and a graphing paper, preferably kung wala naman ay kahit anong papel na lamang, because at the end of this video, you'll be graphing a quadratic function na wala sa inyong module. So let's start.
Graphing quadratic function. The main objective of this lesson is for you to graph a quadratic function by its domain, range, intercepts, axis of symmetry, vertex, and the direction of the opening of the parabola. So from the previous lesson, we have understood that the graph of a quadratic function is called a parabola. And a parabola has 6 different properties. We have a vertex, the axis of symmetry, the intercepts, the x and y intercepts, domain, range, and the direction of the parabola. So, para mas maintindihan natin kung ano ba ang tinutukoy natin dito, I have here a picture of a graph of a quadratic function or the so-called parabola. So, we have here the vertex, which is yung point in black. And then we have the y-intercept or the points that or where the parabola and the y-axis intersect. So yun yung color green dito. We have two x-intercepts here. Okay? So ito ay yung color blue na points wherein those are the point of intersection of the parabola and our x-axis. And of course, the yellow break line is the axis of symmetry that passes through the vertex. So for us to further understand each property and how do we obtain each part of the parabola, so let's start the discussion for each property. Vertex. So the vertex, for us to determine the vertex of a parabola, completing the square or using the vertex form can be used. Okay, so meron tayong tinatawag na completing the square wherein we will come up with a quadratic function in a form of f of x equals a quantity x minus h quantity squared plus k, wherein yung h and k are the vertex of our parabola. Or pwede din naman natin siyang gamitan ng vertex formula, wherein meron tayong specific formula for h, which is negative b over 2a, and sa ating k, which is 4ac minus b squared all over 4a. Okay, so kapag ginamitan natin ng vertex formula, kailangan ay properly nating na-determine ang coefficients ng ating standard form or yung ating values for a, b, and c. So I have here a graph of a quadratic function or a parabola, and the point na color red or the turning point is our vertex. And this is characterized by a location of a point HK. Okay, so yung sabi ko nga kanina, it can be obtained through completing the square or yung vertex formula. Next is the axis of symmetry. The axis of symmetry is the line that passes through the vertex and divides the parabola into two symmetrical halves. It is obtained by x equals h. So, yun yung formula na gagamitin natin. So, I have here the illustration. This illustration is also similar with the previous one kasi nandiyan na rin yung hk natin. It's just that dinagdag natin si break line na color green. And it is characterized by the equation x equals h. So, yung h ay nagbabago depende sa h value ng ating vertex. And of course, again, I want to reiterate what is the relationship of our axis of symmetry with the x-axis. Okay, that is perpendicular. And what is the relationship of our axis of symmetry with respect to our y-axis? They are parallel. Next is the x and y intercepts. The x-intercept and the y-intercept are the points where the graph intersects the x-axis and the y-axis respectively. The x-intercept can be obtained by letting the value of y equal 0 in quadratic function. Similarly, the y-intercept can be obtained by letting the value of the x be equal to 0 in the quadratic function. Okay? So, for us to easily understand kung ano ba ang itsura ng intercept sa ating graph, so I have here the illustration of a parabola wherein meron tayong dalawang x-intercept represented ng dalawang blue points, and we have here a y-intercept represented by a violet point. Okay, so The x-intercepts are x sub 1, 0, and x sub 2, 0. So they are characterized by that format. Ngayon, the values of x sub 1 and x sub 2 can be obtained accurately by solving it algebraically. So, ano ibig ko sabihin? When we set the value of y as 0 sa ating quadratic function, we can easily get the value for our x-intercept through quadratic equation, right? Okay? So, doon natin mas madaling makikita ang value ng x-intercept. Kasi kapag tinignan nyo, if you look closely to this graph, we cannot easily find the value of the x-intercept here, right? Kasi hindi siya sakto. Okay? So, probably siya ay values in between negative 1 and negative 2 and 3 and 4. Next, punta naman tayo sa value ng ating y-intercept. So, this is characterized by the format 0, y sub 1, wherein y sub 1 is the y-intercept or the value of the y-intercept. So, may mga pagkakataon naman that the x and y-intercept can be easily determined kapag tinignan sa graph. Kapag ginraph sa graph at nakita natin na tumama sa isang specific point, madali natin siyang mailalagay or madedetermine kagaya nitong y-intercept, we can easily say that the y-intercept is 0, negative 4. The value of y-intercept is negative 4. Kaya lang, katulad nga nitong x-intercepts na nandito sa inyong screen ngayon, may ganyang pagkakataon na hindi naman natin basta-basta makukuha ang ating intercept values. That's why it is important to solve our x and y intercept algebraically. Ngayon, we have the domain and range. The domain of the function is the set of all possible values of x. Hence, the domain of a quadratic function is any element of real number. So, sabi dito, lahat daw ng elements ng real number ang possible values of x. Bakit kaya ganon? Kasi if we look closely to any parabola, all parabolas contain an arrowhead. Okay? I-discuss ko rin yan sa inyo last time. Ano bang ibig sabihin nun? This arrowhead pertains to the property of a parabola that it extends infinitely upward or downward kung saan man siya nag-open. And ibig sabihin, kung infinitely, dire-diretso ang values niya pababa at pataas, ibig sabihin, the values of our x, yung x values natin, yung x-axis, ay infinitely ding magdedire-diretso. Right? Wala po yung hangganan kasi nga po infinity siya. That's why our domain is an element of a real number or x such that x is an element of a real number and it is denoted by this symbol na naka-flash sa inyong screen. Okay? Punta naman tayo kay range. What is range? So the range of a function is the set of all possible values of y naman. If the vertex is the minimum value, so kailan ang vertex ay minimum value? Okay. So if the parabola opens upward, okay? Then the range is y such that y is greater than or equal to k. So, anong ibig sabihin nun? Ibig sabihin lamang, wala na pong values na mas bababa pa kay k. Bakit po ganon? Kasi, sabi nga natin, the parabola, it extends infinitely upward kung if it opens upward. It extends infinitely at hindi na po yan bababa, right? Wala na po yung tendency na bumaba pa sa value na to. That's why, minimum value na nga po yung vertex natin. Since this is k, hanggang dito na lamang po ang values ng ating y for that specific quadratic function. Okay, so let me erase this. Otherwise, if the vertex is the maximum value, so paano naman, kailan naman maximum value ang ating vertex? Kapag the parabola opens downward. So if the parabola opens downward, the maximum value is our vertex which is hk. So ito naman yung k dito, okay? And the value of our y is should be less than or equal to k. So dapat mas mababa naman daw sa value ng k. Wala nang pagkakataon that this parabola ay aakyat ulit at lalagpas dito sa value na to because our vertex is the maximum value of our function. So the last property of our parabola is the direction of the opening of the parabola. Okay, so this property is the easiest to determine because we can easily determine the opening of the parabola by merely looking at our quadratic function. So the opening of the graph of a parabola or a quadratic function is determined by the value of a in the function f of x equals ax squared plus bx plus c. Okay? So, anong ibig sabihin kung meron tayong value ng a? So if A is greater than 0, so that means A is positive, the graph of the quadratic function opens upward and the vertex is the lowest point or the minimum value of the graph. Otherwise, if A is less than 0 or negative, the graph of the quadratic function opens downward and the vertex is the highest point or the maximum value of the graph. Okay, so paano ko ba nasabi na madali siyang makita? Okay, so simply, kung tayo ay titingin sa vertex form, okay, so this is the vertex form, right? Okay, so this is the vertex form of our quadratic function. And yung a dito, madali natin siyang makita. Next, dito naman sa standard form, madali din nating ma-determine si value ng a, right? So, ang standard form natin ay ito yung value ng a. And if a is positive, it opens upward. If a is negative, it opens downward. Ma'am, paano po pag a is equal to 0? Paano nga po kapag a is equal to 0? That is no longer a quadratic function, but a linear function.
So now let us proceed in graphing quadratic functions.
Okay, so now, let us proceed in graphing some quadratic function using its properties. And ang i-discuss ko ngayon ay dalawang example from your module, and I will give another example na wala sa module at ngayon natin sasagatan. Okay? So we have here example 9.1. We are asked to graph the function f of x equals negative 2x squared plus 4x plus 6 using its properties. Okay, so again, meron tayong 6 na properties na kailangan ma-determine bago tayo makapag-graph. Okay, so first, we are asked to get the vertex. Okay, so for us to get the vertex, since tayo ay nasa standard form, we can easily get the coefficients. A equals negative 2, B equals 4, and C equals 6. And then, using our vertex formula, H equals negative B over 2A. Let us substitute the values. We have H equals negative of 4 all over 2 times negative 2. So H is equal to 2 over 2, hence H is equal to 1. How about the value for K? So for K, we have 4AC minus B squared all over 4A. And then substituting the values, we have 4 times negative 2 times 6 minus 4 squared all over 4 times negative 2. Simplifying, we have K equals negative 64 all over negative 8, which means K is equal to positive 8. Therefore, the vertex is 1, 8. Okay? And since meron tayong vertex, the value of H is 1, we can easily get the axis of symmetry. The axis of symmetry is equal to X equals H, hence that is X equals 1. Next, for us to get the x-intercept, so meron na dyang negative 1 and 3. Okay, so hindi po yan given, inilagay ko lamang dyan, yan yung final answer. Pero paano ba natin kinukuha si x-intercept? So for us to accurately get the x-intercept, we have to set the value of our f of x or yung y to 0. Okay, so copying the quadratic function and setting the value of f of x equals 0. Okay, so we will have a quadratic equation. Okay, we have divided negative 2 sa lahat ng values ng ating function. We have x squared minus 2x minus 3. And then we can easily use the factoring here. And then through zero factor theorem, we can get x sub 1 equals negative 1 and x sub 2 equals 3. Hence, our points are negative 1, 0 and 3, 0. Next, for the y-intercept. So for us to get the y-intercept, we have to set the value of x as 0. Okay, again, copying the quadratic function, let us substitute the value of x as 0. Okay, so we have negative 2 times 0 squared plus 4 times 0 plus 6. Simplifying, we have f of x equals negative 2 times 0 plus 0 plus 6. Therefore, f of x equals 6. So the point is 0, 6. Okay, ano pang sunod? We have to get the domain and range. So the domain is the set of all possible values of x such that x is an element of a real number. Yun po ay constant. How about the range? Okay, again, the range can be obtained by knowing if the parabola opens upward or downward. Okay, so since the parabola opens downward, okay, because a is less than 0, right? Because negative 2 ang ating a, it opens downward. Hence, our range is y such that y is less than or equal to 8. 8 is our k value. Okay. Okay, now let us proceed in graphing the quadratic function. Ngayon, ay flash sa inyong screen yung nakuha nating properties. We have the vertex, the axis of symmetry, the x-intercept, the y-intercept, the domain, the range, and the opening of the parabola. Okay? So, kapag ka pinag-solve ko kayo ng quadratic function or pinag-graph ko kayo ng quadratic function using its properties, itong anim na ito ang kailangan kong makita. Okay? So, I will flash here the graph of this quadratic function. Okay? So, the vertex here is 1, 8. So, yung vertex natin is this one. Itong black na to, this is the vertex. And then, we have the axis of symmetry, characterized by x equals 1. We have y-intercept, which is 0, 6. And then, we have two x-intercepts. We have negative 1, 0, and 3, 0. And then, we have the domain, of course, that is element of real number. X such that x is an element of real number, rather. And then, since our maximum value, rather, is 8, yung k natin, so that's why our range is y is less than or equal to 8. And the opening of the parabola opens downward. So another example is given to you. Okay, so we have example 9.3. This is from your module wherein we are asked to graph the function f of x equals 1/2 quantity x minus 1/2 quantity squared minus 2 using its properties. So before we start, I want you to compare the given quadratic function from the previous example at yung example natin ngayon. So ano pagkakaiba nila? Una, the previous example is written in standard form. Tapos itong binigay sa atin ngayon is written in vertex form. So, mas madali yung example natin ngayon since we can easily identify the value of our h and k by observation. Next, the values of our a. Kanina, if the value of a is negative, so the parabola opened downward. So ngayon, since the value of our a obviously is positive, or because that is 1/2, or that is greater than 0, that means the parabola will open upward. So let us start in determining our vertex. Since the given is written in vertex form, we can just pattern it sa ating vertex form na f of x equals a quantity x minus h quantity squared plus k. So for us to get the value of h, so negative h equals negative 1/2. So that means h equals 1/2. And then the value for k, that is negative 2. Okay, so therefore the vertex is 1/2 negative 2. So for our axis of symmetry, that is x equals h, then x equals 1/2 because h is equivalent to 1/2. For our x-intercept, we have 5 halves and negative 3 halves. So again, para makuha natin ang x-intercept, we set the value of f of x as 0. And then, let us solve for the vertex form. Okay, we have 1/2 quantity x squared minus x plus 1/4 quantity minus 2. Okay, and then let us multiply the value of 1/2. We have 1/2 x squared minus 1/2 x plus 1/8 minus 2. And then combining like terms. Okay, so we have 1/2 x squared minus 1/2 x minus 15 over 8. And then para makuha natin or maalis natin yung mga fraction, we multiplied our whole value sa ating value ng 8. Okay? So, again, tinatagtag lang natin yung denominators. So, 8 times 0, that is 0. 8 times 1/2, that is 4. So, 4x squared. And then, 8 times negative 1/2 x, that's negative 4x. And negative 15 over 8 times 8 is negative 15. And then, from this, meron na tayong standard form. And from this, pwede nating gamitan ng kahit anong method. So, by this, ay gumamit ako ng quadratic formula. And I substituted the values of a, b, and c. So, yun ay yung 4, negative 4, and negative 15 respectively. And substituted it sa ating quadratic formula. Okay, so, substituting and simplifying, we have x equals 4 positive negative square root of 256 all over 8. Okay? So, simply, x sub 1 is 5 halves and x sub 2 is negative 3 halves. So, kung medyo nalilito pa kayo sa quadratic equation, pwede nyong balikan yung videos na meron tayo for the quadratic equation para mas maalala nyo at ma-review nyo kung paano po mag-solve ng quadratic equation kasi gagamitin natin siya sa ating lesson for today. So, therefore, we have 5 halves 0 and negative 3 halves 0. Sa y-intercept naman, okay, so we set the value of x as 0. Substitute natin, f of x equals 1 half times 0 minus 1 half quantity squared minus 2. So, simplifying, we have 0 minus 1 half, and then squared, that is 1/4 multiplied by 1 half minus 2. So, f of x equals 1/8 minus 2. Simply, f of x equals negative 15 over 8. That's why our point is 0, negative 15 over 8. And then for our domain, again, that is set of all possible values of x such that x is an element of a real number. And our range, since the parabola opens upward, a is greater than 0, ang value ng ating range is the values of y such that y is greater than or equal to negative 2, which is our k value. Again, flashed on your screen are the properties of our quadratic function or the parabola. So we have the vertex, axis of symmetry, x-intercept, y-intercept, domain, range, and opening of the parabola. Okay, so ito po ang itsura ng ating parabola. Okay, so as you can see, here the vertex lies at 1/2 negative 2. Okay, so ibig sabihin, 1/2 ay nasa x value, so in between ng 0 and positive 1. And then, negative 2 ay it lies sa negative 2 value ng ating y. So, this is our vertex. Next, we have the axis of symmetry. So, pwede natin siyang makuha by getting x equals h. So, that is x equals 1/2. Next, we have the x-intercept or the points where the parabola intersects with the x-axis. Okay, so meron tayong dalawang x-intercept dito. We have negative 3 halves or makikita natin yun dito sa in between ng negative 1 and negative 2, and then we have 5 halves 0. Okay, so we have 2.50 point in between 2 and 3. And then the y-intercept, y-intercept, so sabi ko nga sa inyo, may mga pagkakataon na hindi basta-basta makikita ang value ng y or x-intercept unless you solve for it. Okay? So, that's negative 15 over 8. That is actually negative 1.875, but to round it off, that's negative 1.88. And then sa domain, that is x such that x is an element of real number, and y ay values of y such that y should be greater than or equal to negative 2 only. Wala nang mas bababa pa sa value na yan. And the opening of the parabola opens upward. Okay, so as promised, I will give you another example that is not on your module. So, you have to graph the function f of x equals 4x squared plus 24x plus 36 using its properties. Okay? So, I want you to get a pen and a paper or preferably a graphing paper kung meron para mas mabilis kayo makapag-graph. Okay? And then, you can pause this video for a while and answer on your own. You check kung kaya nyo ng sagutan and mag-graph ng quadratic function. And then, after that, you can play this and check kung tama ba ang inyong mga sagot. Okay, so if you are done, let us start. Okay, so given dito is a quadratic function in standard form. So, let us first get the vertex. At pwede nyo gamitin pwede nyo i-obtain ang vertex through completing the square or using the vertex formula. Pwedeng gamitin yung vertex formula, pero for me, I prefer completing the square kasi mas mabilis siyang gamitin. Okay, so we have f of x equals 4 times x squared plus 6x plus 9. Okay, and then plus 36 minus 9 times 4. Okay, and then f of x is equal to 4 times x plus 3 quantity squared plus 0 because 36 minus 36 is 0. Okay, so simply h or negative h, kasi yun yung nasa pattern natin. Yung pattern kasi natin sa vertex form is f of x equals a times x minus h quantity squared plus k. So for k, we have negative h equals positive 3. So let us divide both sides by negative 1. So simply, h is equal to negative 3. And then for our value of k naman is 0. So that means our vertex is negative 3, 0. And of course, for the axis of symmetry, okay, so for the axis of symmetry, since this can be obtained by x equals h and h is negative 3, so that is x equals negative 3. Okay? Next, let us get the x-intercept. So for us to get the x-intercept, pwede nating iset ang value ng f of x as 0. Okay. So for me, I will set this value f of x equals 4x squared plus 24x plus 36. So I'll set f of x as 0 equals, since 4, 24, and 36 are divisible by 4, pwede kong i-divide all sides by 4. So this will become x squared plus 6x plus 9. And then using factoring, meron akong dalawang factors. I have x plus 3 and x plus 3. Using the zero factor theorem, we can equate both factors to 0, which means x equals negative 3 and x equals negative 3. So, parehas po ang nakuha nating value for our x. That means, isa lang ang ating x-intercept. So, that x-intercept lies at negative 3, 0. Okay. So, anong napapansin nyo sa ating x-intercept? It is the same with our, okay, so I'll just change another color ng ating pen. Okay, so it's the same with our vertex. So, anong ibig sabihin yan? Okay? Ibig sabihin ay the value of our x-intercept is the same with the vertex and the vertex lies at the x-axis. So, yun yung una nating interpretation dyan. Okay, next, let us get the y-intercept naman. Okay, so the y-intercept here, we use again f of x equals 4x squared plus 24x plus 36. Okay, and then let us set the value of x as 0. So f of x equals 4 times 0 squared plus 24 times 0 plus 36. Okay, and then simplifying, we have f of x equals 0 plus 36. Hence, f of x equals 36. Kaya po ay ang y-intercept lies at 0, 36. Next, how about the domain? So for our domain, we have possible values of x such that x is an element of real number. So ganun lang, walang ibang sagot. Ganun din ang range. So how about the range? Okay, so if the parabola opens upward, so our range is set of all possible values of y such that y is greater than or equal to the value of k, which is 0. Okay, and then for the opening of the parabola, okay, so for the opening of the parabola, since a is greater than 0, then it opens upward. Okay po. Okay, so tandaan natin yung mga values. Okay? Let us now proceed in graphing. Okay, so let us proceed in graphing. Okay? So for the vertex or the properties, let me just rewrite it here. Yung mga nakuha natin kanina. So we have negative 3, 0. We have axis of symmetry. We have x equals negative 3. And then the x-intercept is the same with the vertex, negative 3, 0. The y-intercept is 0, 36. Domain is x such that x is an element of a real number. And then range is y such that y is greater than or equal to 0. And for the opening of the parabola, a is greater than 0, hence it opens upward. Okay? So now let's start graphing. So for the vertex, it lies at the x-axis since it is the same with the value of x-intercept. So we have negative 3, 0. Okay, so the value of our vertex lies here. Okay? Okay, so that is the minimum value of our vertex, or the parabola rather, because the parabola opens upward. Next, let us determine the axis of symmetry. So the axis of symmetry is the line that passes through our parabola. Okay? perpendicular to the x-axis and parallel to the y-axis. So, ito ay yung line that passes through. So, ito yun. Let me use a break line here. Okay? So, kung kayo po ay may ruler or any straightening tool, much better so that mas indicated na siya ay straight line. Next, so since our x-intercept ay nandito na, the y-intercept medyo malayo siya sa origin. Ano? So, if you use an increment of 2 or 5 or mas mataas pa, para mas mahabol nyo po yung pagpa-plot ng y-intercept, okay lang. Pero since ang ginagamit ko dito ngayon ay increment na 1, so medyo mahaba or malayo ang tatakbuhin ko pag kinuha ko pa yung 0.36. Okay? So, pwede po na hindi ko muna siya ilagay dito dahil indicated din naman kung paano natin na-solve na siya talaga ang y-intercept. Okay? So, ang mahalaga nandun yung solution nyo. Okay. And then, the domain is element of real number. The range is, the y value should be greater than or equal to 0 and the parabola opens upward. Ngayon, ang problema, kapag ito lang yung inyong property, tapos malayo si x and y-intercept, or the x-intercept ay given na, pero yung y-intercept medyo malayo, paano niyo siya i-graph? So, kapag ganito, ang isang option ninyo ay to use the table of values para lang matrace ko siya. So, hanap ako ng dalawang point here. Okay, so let me use f of x equals 4 times x plus 3 quantity squared plus 0. And I will substitute the value of negative 2 para malaman ko kung anong value niya sa y. Ano? Okay, so 4 times negative 2 plus 3 quantity squared plus 0. So f of x equals, so negative 2 plus 3 is 1 squared plus 4. So this is 4. Okay? So meron akong point here. Negative 2, 4. Okay, negative 2, 4. Okay. Okay. Again, so, kuha ulit ako ng isa pang point. Gagamit ako ng negative 1 para naman makuha ko po yung isa pang point. So, f of x equals 4 times negative 1 plus 3 squared plus 0. Okay, so f of x equals negative 1 plus 3, that's 2 times 2 is 4 times 4 is 16 plus 0, so that's 16. Okay, so medyo mataas na or malayo na ano. Okay, so I have here another point na nasa taas naman. So, tandaan ninyo that the parabola is a mirror faced, right? So, ibig sabihin, ang katapat nitong negative 2, 4 ay negative 4, 4. So, from this, pwede na tayong mag-trace ng ating rough estimation ng parabola. Okay. Okay. So, i-trace lang natin. The parabola should look like this. So, medyo, narrow ang parabola natin, right? Okay. So, the parabola should look like this. Iwasan na sobrang V. Okay? So, hindi ko lang siya na, dito. There. Let's try to modify para hindi masyadong, yan. Okay? So, the parabola is somehow narrow or narrower than the previous parabolas that we are making. Okay? So, your parabola should look like this.
This ends our video for today. So I hope that through this video, you were able to further understand the lesson and nasagot ang ilang mga katanungan nyo regarding our topic for today. Kung meron kayong mga tanong pa na kailangan pang i-address, you can always ask me during our synchronous class. So I hope that through this video, you were able to think, wonder, and explore mathematics through graphing of quadratic function. Thank you very much.